I got a message, a private message from the head of development of Chrome, saying he was really mad at me, saying you should not tell that and all of that. So after that, like 2 or 3 weeks, Google bought I don't remember the name of the codec, but they bought a proprietary codec to do videos, and then they open sourced it. So I don't know if it's because of me. I don't think so, but maybe I had a small
Well,
nudge on the open standards.
I like to think it was because of you. I mean,
Well, I like to think it too.
you got lambasted by the head of Chrome. So hello, my fellow marineros the world over. Soy capitán, to quote Richie Sambora from La Bamba, of La Bamba fame. Welcome to your bi-weekly dose of salty knowledge from the world of tech recruiting with your host, myself, the cool recruiter. And today I have the utmost honor of having with me Benoit Piette, or Ben Piette, as I like to call him. And it's just a little bit of context to give you an idea. I've known this guy for almost 20 years now, which doesn't make
Oh,
any of us 18
that
years, right?
doesn't make, yeah, well, a bit less
18.
than 20,
Not
somewhere along, but that doesn't make us younger, right?
no, man. That
Mm.
makes us long
But
in the yeah. We're old. We're old ants. We're old sea dogs. Old sea dogs, as I like to say when I take my parrot voice, and we'll talk about that, Ben and I, the fact that we're getting long in the tooth, and but just a bit of context. So I've known Ben for a while, and Ben is an architect, specifically a solution architect. I'll let him explain where he fits in the whole picture, and introduce himself. But and also obviously like to hear some you know the tradition here would like to hear some cabin gossip about you, Benoit. So the floor is yours. Please tell us about you, about what you do.
Okay, so yes, my name is Benoit. I'm a solution architect, freelance since how many years now? Almost 9 years. And actually, my first contract as a freelance was through Martin's company. So basically, it's his fault that I'm freelance. But I did prepare for a long time because it was my dream. And if you remember when we were working together as like front end developers at the time, was a long time ago. Uh, Both of us had a dream to be freelance. I remember we discussed this a couple of times. Say, oh yeah, it will be interesting to be freelance. So yes, so I'm solution architect. I've been architect since about 15 years. Before that, I was like back-end developer, front-end developer, mostly front-end developer. At the time, we're in the 2000. Internet Explorer was like 98% of the market. And then, all the developers were forced to really code badly. As an example, I would have coding badly, was using a lot of transparent pixels to, fudge
I never
the
did that. I never did that.
the
I
user
mean, what?
interface. So that we were forced to
Yeah.
develop like that. And then this is where I wanted to see if other people had the web standard in heart. And that's where I met with people from W3 Quebec. And then we made, it was the beginning of the meetups and things like that in 2003, 2004. So we created that. And then after a while, I was like the head of that for a while. So I was like still quite present in the community. And this comes from the anecdote you wanted to that I can
The
tell you.
famous cabin gossip is coming.
Yeah, this is good gossip. So At that time, I was an invited expert at the W3C for the HTML5 standard. So when everybody was building the new version of HTML5, well, you had a lot of developers that could basically tell what they think and things like that. I was really a proponent of everything that was accessibility at the time, and there was a lot of long discussion that were very difficult and political, so I didn't do much. But I did something once. So there was that video tag, if everybody remembers the video tag on HTML5. We were deciding, oh, should we have like a particular codec to use so that it's available as much in Linux or Mac or PC or well, was it Firefox at the time? Yeah, Firefox and Chrome, and of course Internet Explorer. So, and there was a decision by the W3C that says that, you know what, we'll let the vendor decide. But the problem is if you let the vendor decide, it's going to have, you know, something like digital rights management, which of course makes it impossible to implement in Linux, for instance, because it needs to be open source. Now, I crafted that really long email, put some references to the mission of the W3C and saying, you know, you're not respecting your own mission if you don't put your foot on the ground. You'll let Apple or Microsoft or Google decide. You're the standard body, you should decide. So, and then I send that email, very stressed and all of that. And during the weekend after that, I got a message, a private message from the head of development of Chrome, saying he was really mad at me, saying like, you know, you should not tell that and all of that. So after that, like 2 or 3 weeks, Google bought I don't remember the name of the codec, but they bought a proprietary codec to do videos, and then they open sourced it. So I don't know if it's because of me. I don't think so, but maybe I had a small
Well,
you know, nudge on the open standards.
I like to think it was because of you. I mean,
Well, I like to think it too.
you got lambasted by the head of Chrome at the time,
Yeah. So that
which
was
is
special.
pretty
I
it's
got
so
the
funky.
attention.
So Ben, you're an architect, and I remember when architect or software architect or solution architects started calling themselves architects. The original architects, so the ones designing buildings, started complaining. There was some complaint because they
Yeah,
felt
yeah.
like you not you personally, but software architects, solutions architects were using the term for things other than designing buildings and whatnot. But I think it would be interesting if you could give us like an overview of
Mm.
what it is that an architect does in the world of technology. And I understand that there's a bit of an overlap, or a
Yeah.
solution architect might mean different things depending on the company. But to give our listeners like a kind of an overview of where an architect fits in the whole tech ecosystem.
Yeah, I say the resemblance to a real architect, a building architect, it's a bit similar in the sense that we're we're designing the big picture. So if you design a big building or anything like that, you're making sure everything fits together. There, as you said, there are multiple types of architect. So
Mm-hmm.
depending if you're, let's say, working, let's say on a single page app, and you say how you're going to organize let's say the Angular components, and all which library you're going to use for state management, for instance, that will be a front end architect or an app or software
Yeah.
architect for front end. So, but if you do a bit the same on the back end, let's say you have a couple of microservices and you decide, okay, which microservice does what? How do you organize them? Which data you put on which database? How do you make sure everything flows?
Yeah.
That's going to be a software architect too, but it's a backend one. It's more like
Right.
an application architect. But now let's say you're going a bit higher than that, and you say, okay, this system needs to talk to a mainframe. It
Right.
needs to, because the data of, let's say, data, the data is there. You need a way to talk to the mainframe.
Right.
How you make system talk together, but it's the same thing as your Angular component earlier. Now, this is more an integration architect. Most of the time, solution architect like me, we do that. Sometimes we go deeper on the technology, but
Yeah.
sometimes we do not. It depends. But let's say now you think about this, but more from an enterprise perspective, all the standards you want to use. You need to have, you need to be aligned on which product you use, and then it becomes a bit. You add the timeline, the time, and the how your enterprise works. So here, that's where you get enterprise architects. But enterprise architects do a lot more than that. They look at the big picture as well from a business standpoint. What type of software we will need in 3 to 5 years? What's
Right.
our current state in the enterprise? So even with enterprise architect, you'll get specialties. You may have one for
Gotcha.
data, one for security, and so on. So it's higher and higher, and sometimes depending on the size of your, let's say you work in a startup, you probably don't need an enterprise architect at that time, but maybe your solution architect might do that work at the same
Yeah.
time. So it really depends.
And they might mean slightly different things depending on the environment in question.
Mhm.
Means that whenever a client asks me for any specific type of architect, I always make sure that okay, it doesn't matter what you call them. What is that person actually going? What is that
Yeah.
person actually going to be doing? And that's going to inform the type of candidates that I will present.
Something else I'd like to say about this, and for people that are devs today and want to become architects, okay, I know sometimes you have the knowledge, okay, but your boss gonna say, okay, you're not ready yet. Oh no, you don't have enough experience. But you know what? How can you become an architect, or can you sell yourself as an architect? Is work with sales. Because when you work with sales, you get, first people that are doing sales, they're the one that need to know about the client to get the business, right?
Right.
And they need to tell that the team has enough knowledge to be able
Yeah.
to actually do this. So they
Pull it
would
off.
bring
Yeah.
somebody technical. And sometimes you're the nerd that can talk,
Yeah.
and they bring you
You're
to
right.
the
Yeah.
sales, and
Yeah.
you help on sales pitch.
Yeah.
And if I have something to young people that want to become architects and they're devs and they see themselves as stocks, work with sales. Work with sales. You're gonna learn so much.
I've been in I worked in sales for quite a while, and what I do still is very much sales. But the best duo, the dynamic duo, I would say is someone who's good at selling, and to have someone that's good at presenting the technical
Mhm.
feasibility of it. And if the chemistry is working well between these two, then the sky's the limit basically. And you have a knack for endearing yourself to salespeople. And I remember when we started working together, we got along right away.
Yeah.
And although we're different in vastly different in our approaches, the dynamic is there.
It's weird a bit because we started our career pretty much when internet started.
Yeah.
Now, so our career was pretty much internet based from the ground up, but still, it was really it's in its infancy in the 90s. But now people that are starting, they're starting with AI, they're
Yeah.
starting with a lot of other stuff that's so different to what we used to.
Yeah, my
So
my my first job, the first job I got right out of university was I was a web developer for Air Canada, and back then the whole web department of Air Canada was just one person. It was me. It sounds silly, but that's pretty much what it is, and I had access to Air Canada.ca from my basement at home. I would just upload stuff using FTP. Different time, different
Yeah,
time.
yeah, and it's a good time to be freelance, I think. I know that, and if we look to the both of us, you have a pirate
I am a
setup.
fan.
Yeah, you are a pirate, but
There you
that's
go.
personal branding, and this is
Yeah,
something I'd like
sure.
to talk about a bit because a way to when you're freelance, you need to present yourself a bit differently so that people know that it's you and they remember you and
Yeah,
they say, he dresses maybe a bit
yeah.
weird. He must be very good.
Yeah, if you can,
Something
if
like
you
that.
can, yeah, if you can walk around
Yeah.
with a tricorn
Well,
hat
I don't,
or
you know,
goggles, you know.
yeah, the goggles are just for this interview because since you like pirates a lot, I like steampunk stuff, so I decided to get these. But but still,
Yeah.
we do have a personal branding.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was one of the most, you know, important decision I took in my business was to go with a basically the branding that I use now. That is basically it is just me being me. Right? I've always been a big fan of pirates. I mean, I ever since as a young kid, I read Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson. I've been into pirates, and and when the time came to change the branding, before I was you remember Stratweb, I was very corporate, and I decided to spice things up a bit, and I was about to hire the services of a storyteller or storytelling marketing expert. That this lady that was about to charge me 300 US an hour to help me come up with a storytelling brand or whatever. And I shared my idea. I said, well, what I do essentially is I reach out to company and I try to convince people to come and work for my clients. So essentially I steal people. So I'm kind of a pirate, and I went down that route. And she looked at me with like she was like, this is never going to work, Marty. You're going to scare everyone away. Get forget about that. And I said, you know what? I'll try it myself. And I ended
Mhm.
up saving a whole chunk of change because I did it myself. And to this day, there's a lot of whether they be like very high level candidates or clients or whatever, they say, Marty, I get pinged by headhunters 100 times a week. But I chose to talk to you
Mhm.
because of the old pirate thing, or because of the cool sunglasses, or because of you're into skateboarding, or because of something to do with the way I present myself.
Mhm.
So that's one way the best way to get the ball rolling, and then obviously they know that
Yeah,
uh, I can also walk the walk, right? I know what I'm talking about, and
that's important.
yeah. I mean, you got to deliver, otherwise you're all fluff. But to cut through the noise, man, is the best way. And also, I mean, let's not forget that I'm having a great time doing it. It's fun to
Yeah.
it's fun to
Looks
do.
fun. That's why I decided, should I have a steampunk look a bit? Yeah, because it's time. I'm not sure I love steampunk as much as you love pirates, but it's all fun, right? So it gives us a bit of an edge. And you know, um, about being freelance, another thing, and you said a bit earlier that you're being yourself. And to me, the most powerful thing about being freelance, it's not the money, it's not it's you have your own values. You present your own values, and it's not just positive. Everybody, nobody's perfect. There are things we do better and things you
Yeah,
do not as good, and that's normal. But each time you do something for your clients, you do it as yourself, as your
right.
company is, and you're not representing somebody else's values,
No.
which you can align with. It's okay, but it's yours. And to me,
Yeah.
this is the most powerful thing about being freelance, and this is why I really love being freelance. And I would like to thank you again for nudging me in the right direction
No problem.
on this
Yeah.
part. It's the first contract we had together was definitely something on my side because just a quick note I'd like for other people that might be a bit like me, so a bit more. I know it doesn't necessarily look like that now because we're talking together, but most of the time, when I'm not when I'm not talking about something for a way too much a long time, I'm very shy. So when you're a bit more of an introvert, instead of one of the things I learned is that instead of forcing I want to be freelance, so I'm going to search for a job or search for a contract, or you prepare yourself. And this can take some time. In my case, let's say, you remember when we discussed that like 20 years ago, when it was our dream to be freelance. I did prepare myself since that time with, as I said earlier, being present in a working group, in meetups, things like that. So you prepare yourself, and then when the opportunity arises, then it's easier to say yes. But even then, it's still a lot stressful when you start all of this. But when you get the right help, like from either a good accountant,
An
so a good
accountant.
accountant or things like that. When you get all your pieces together, then it becomes easier and easier as time goes.
Yeah,
So yeah, so
yeah, and it's one of the I used to give presentations or talks about how to become a freelancer, and there are a few things that I mentioned, such as find yourself an accountant
hmm.
that that is savvy and honest, but not creative, but not too creative. You don't want to appear on the government, on the IRS's
Oh, you
radar.
don't want that.
No.
Yeah. But I'd say what's important is that again, you need to talk with people and say, okay, I want to become freelance. You need to tell it, of course.
Yeah,
But at the same time, if you prepare yourself, like, start slow, a bit like I did, works probably better with people that are a bit more introvert. If you prepare yourself, like, be present, because it's always easier to present yourself. Like, I remember when I was starting at W3 Quebec, I was really shy, and then I need to talk with this person who looks important over there, and then I need to tell them I'm Benoit, I'm a web developer. No, I was president of W3 Quebec. And I was less shy because I had that, all that
yeah,
thing behind me
yeah,
that was helping me, be that I could leverage. So
right.
when you are present in web communities or any communities you want to work with, then it helps you, gain work
Credibility.
over the credibility, but
Yeah,
also work over your shyness, that you can talk
yeah,
with people. So this helps somebody like me. Of course, it's not the same for everyone. And the way I see it as an architect is that you
yeah,
take all the sorry, all the knowledge from the expert. You talk with them and you try to
yeah,
understand them, because sometimes they are they're specialists, and you need to kind of understand enough to be able to make decisions. And then you take
yeah,
all that knowledge and you try to make the system coherent with itself. And this is my main mantra from architecture. You need to make something that works well with itself.
yeah,
Because, depending on everywhere you are, you may decide, okay, this is the best solution. You need micro front end, and you need a bunch of microservices and like multiple database. It needs to be in the cloud. But yeah, maybe that's not the right solution for this project if you are like a purist. And I used to be a bit purist when I was young. You have
yeah. Well,
yeah,
that's
you made an example in your last
the previous one.
previous
Yeah,
uh, webcast, which I suppose if you haven't, people that are here haven't heard of, you should. It was really interesting.
yeah.
So,
I did a
yeah,
bit of foreshadowing, so I sort of brought
but
you in before you were actually invited. So foreshadowing my future.
you made me look very bad, though.
Not
But
really. I
still,
mean,
but
it
still.
wasn't bad. It's just that I remember when you said and you quoted Ghostbusters. I
Oh,
remember
of
you
course.
did.
No,
Yeah,
it's bad, but
yeah.
it is bad.
Or
It's
that
still
it wasn't. It was bad. It's like
crossing the
crossing
streams. Exactly.
crossing the
But you
streams.
know, I
Yeah.
that's something else from my personal branding. I always bring up quotes from Ghostbusters or now mostly Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, or
And
so.
and on that subject, because I don't want to forget all that thought, but you told me once, and it stuck with me, that there are different types of architects, and you compare them to Doctor Who and Doctor Strange
No,
and
not
someone else.
exactly
What
like
wasn't
that.
it?
Yeah. Well,
I'm
okay,
misquoting you
of
again.
course.
Okay.
So, because I love science fiction, I'd say there's three types of architects. You know, you have the Star Wars architect, you have the Star Trek architect, and you have the Doctor Who architect.
Ah, there
So,
you go.
okay,
Yeah.
so let's start with Star Trek. Of course, Star Trek, you know, it's this big bureaucracy, and you know, I see enterprise architect that look at the whole picture like 10 years in advance, and they work very high level but have bright ideas, but they work a lot with the structure, or a solution architect, which is mostly permanent in this case, you know, is going to work with all the, you know, very, very detailed governance, for instance. Governance is very important for Star Trek type of architect. But sometimes you get your Kirk or your, that go behind the scene and still make things work.
Right.
But it's still part of the big structure. So I see
Yeah.
like a consultant for big firms, or you know, people that are staying permanent as architects when they have a lot of experience. I see that a bit more like Star Trek. Their loyalties to the Enterprise, you know, to
Gotcha.
the Federation. But let's look at Star Wars architect. They're Jedi's. You know, the Jedi's, they have a lot of talent. They're the one who have the most talent, but their loyalty is to the profession. You know,
Yeah.
the religion, the Jedi
Yeah.
religion.
The
So
code and whatnot.
these are, to me, they're a bit more difficult to work with because they have very strong ideas, and they're most of the time they're a lot. They have a lot more knowledge than me because they are the specialists I was talking to you about. And you get the Doctor Who's. Doctor Who, their loyalty is to their friends and their team, and they're, well, they go from project to project, you know, like in the science fiction series. And so they're freelance most of the time, and they're gonna, you know,
Yeah.
they'll be a bit, they'll look at the whole picture, but they act locally, so they make good solution architects.
Yeah.
And
Well,
personally, I'm definitely in the
yeah.
Doctor Who rank,
Yeah, that's what I was about
because
to say. Yeah.
that's
I
totally
was
clear.
yeah.
And if you look at, you know, in a team, you'll have a different version of everyone. You know, Doctor Who architects, they can work relatively well with Star Trek ones, though if you have a Captain Kirk, that might be a bit more difficult because, yeah. And if you have Star Wars architect with Doctor Who architects, it's gonna go a bit bad, you know, because you know, the Star Wars one would think, you know, this guy is not competent, he's too
Yeah.
generalist, and the other one will say, you know, they're not thinking about the big picture, so yeah, I'm gonna ignore them. So yeah, you need to be careful of that. So this is how I see it a bit, but yeah, you have
Dude,
uh,
you should
yeah.
totally write a book about that. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And what it means is that the kind of architect you are is, you know, depends on who your loyalty is
A bit, yeah. Well,
to, right?
I mean, I'm joking a bit on the loyalty sense because
No, but I like
we're
it.
always loyal to our profession and all of that. But I mean, what's most important? Is it your team, your project, or is it like the governance of the enterprise, or is it really like your profession as a, you
Yeah.
know? So I'd say maybe I started a bit more Star Wars when I was young,
Yeah.
and I became a
Yeah.
bit more Doctor Who
Yeah.
as I grew older. Well,
Yeah.
probably when I switched freelance, I probably completely changed.
Yeah. But you know, the funny thing is we both had the dream of becoming freelancers, and we took vastly different routes to it.
Yes, definitely.
And 20 years, or almost 20 years down, and we're still working together.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and that speaks to the you know, the synergy between us.
Hmm.
That
Yeah, well, your idea of a pirate, said
Yeah,
hey, maybe I should be steampunk, you know. But
That, yeah,
because it works because you're the pirate, you're going on the sea, but I stay on the ground, but I prepare like new new technologies for you.
exactly,
And then you
exactly,
bring that to your boat, something like that, you know. So
exactly.
of course we're going to a lot in the fantasies, but you know, at the end of the day, that's what is fun.
Yeah, I mean, you come up with images like that,
Mm.
and it helps to
But
explain what it is that
exactly.
what it is that
Mm.
we do. And this hat is actually a movie prop. I got it from someone who
Okay.
worked on the yeah. It's I got it from someone who worked on the set of Pirates of the Caribbean. So it was it was they made like Johnny Depp is wearing a real pirate hat from the late or late 17th century, which shouldn't be on his head. It should be in a museum by all rights. And but they did make a couple of copies in order to for the stunts and when he falls into the water and stuff like that. And they did them using the same technique as those from the 17th century or 18th century.
Okay.
It's leather, cow leather, I think that's boiled with vegetables. So it's called vegetable leather, but it's not vegan or anything. It's just that vegetables, like I think like beets and potatoes are used to sort of treat the leather, and then they make that. So it's a perfect copy of what Johnny wears in the movie, and they made like a couple hundreds of them for the stunts, for this, for that, and I got a hold of one of them. I have an ancestor. It was called Baptiste Le Fripon was his pirate name, a real pirate. He's got his
Hey.
Wikipedia page. He's on my father's side, so he's an ancestor of mine. The guy was married with three different women. He was French, hence the name. He was harassing the English, um, and um, and he retired. He retired. The last that's known of him is from a census in France. So he finally picked one of the three wives, the one in France, and settled down. But he because usually careers for pirate were very short. Like we're talking 1 or 2 years. Um, they would get hanged. They would die in jail. They would, a wound would get infected. It was a very dangerous profession, but this guy managed to actually retire successfully. I'm like, wow. You and I share musical taste. I know I'm the one that introduced you to very
Yeah,
early Cure material with
yeah, a
yeah.
particular album which is definitely one of my favorites. It's a very good
Pornography.
album.
Pornography from the Cure, which is one
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
first three albums. It is very early,
Yeah,
very,
yeah,
very, very
a bit
dark.
more depressive than what they do after, but very, very good.
We share musical taste, and I
Mm.
see that. I don't think you're building a rocket. I
Yeah,
think
well,
you're actually creating music with the equipment you
it's
have behind you.
it is not music. It is noise.
And now you are going to delight us with the music part of it. Crickets.
Yeah, something stopped working. Probably.
I couldn't tell. I thought I couldn't tell that anything stopped working.
Yeah, I
It
need to
some of
fix
it
it.
sounds like feedback.
Yeah, it's all feedback. It's all about
It's
the
feedback,
thing.
right? But it reminds me of at the end of of each of their shows, Nirvana. You know Nirvana, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, they would play a song because they didn't like to play encores, right? Like so, as the last song, they would play a song called "Endless Nameless," where Cobain would invariably destroy instruments and use his guitar to destroy, say, amplifiers and whatnot, and try to produce as much feedback as
Mm.
possible and it sounds like that. So Ben,
Yeah.
thank you for taking the time today
Well, thank you. You too.
to walk us through. I think you've given me and our listeners like a complete overview of what it is, what an architect does, and what makes a good architect, and how one can become an architect, and the value in becoming a freelance architect. And I think that we covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah, I think. Yeah,
I
definitely.
thought
Yeah.
you're good at you're good at explaining stuff, man. I think that's one of the reasons you're such a
I
good
try.
architect. Well, you are. You're a Doctor Who. You're loyal to your friends. You stick with you and I have been working for ages together, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
stay like that, my man. Don't go changing. And
No, I don't want to do that.
it was a delight to have you today.
Same here. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time, and we'll be in touch, you and I.
Definitely.